Something really big is happening next door to Disneyland in California.
Heads up, everybody. We have a new neighbor.
Oh no, the world ends at the gate.
Disneyland's where?
Not from this coordinate, Miss White. Aha! They're from California. Ooh, nice limo.
Is there a prince inside?
Sorry, girls, but any interest in a very large bear?
Introducing Disney's California Adventure. A whole new theme park filled with the fun and adventures of California. Right next door to Disneyland, where the magic began.
Let's go see him.
Easy, big guy. Nobody likes a nosy neighbor.
Disney's California Adventure, opening February 2001.
In 2001, Disney opened up a second park adjacent to their original Disneyland. As a long-awaited expansion to the historic site where Walt Disney's dreams became a reality, expectations for this park were high. But a fact I'm sure will surprise no one watching: the second park at the Disneyland Resort did not live up to its predecessor upon opening. The tale of how this park failed upon opening and was then built up to success by expansions throughout the 2010s is a story that has been told many times. For the sake of context, I will touch upon these improvements, but unfortunately this is no longer where the story ends. By following California Adventure's progress up until the present day, the upward trajectory of the park gets called into question. It seems that Disney's miraculously saved theme park now has another chapter within its story. Disney's California Adventure was originally designed around the concept of celebrating the state of California's most iconic locations. Celebrating iconic places within a theme park was not a new concept for Disney. The entirety of Epcot's World Showcase and many lands in Animal Kingdom were built around this same philosophy. But there is a fundamental difference between these and California Adventure. Save for Epcot's America Pavilion, neither of these parks are celebrating the location that they actually reside in. Even the American Pavilion is showcasing a historic version of colonial America, not present-day Florida. California Adventure, however, was bringing California to California. Now, California is a pretty big state. Yosemite and San Francisco, two of the places the park originally featured, are not right outside the gates of the park, but traveling from Anaheim to any of these places is only a few hours away. Going off of the fact that most of the park's guests are California locals, it's hard to understand why they'd want to see what they already likely have seen. Plus, the few tourists who aren't exclusively making the trip for the theme park are likely going to check out some of these state icons during their California trip. Beyond just a conceptual failure, the quality of the product itself was rather doomed upon opening. Disney had been proposing the idea of a second gate for quite some time, but unfortunately they made some grave mistakes. One of the key concepts put forward to the Anaheim Council featured plans which appeared to take the place of local businesses that had not made any agreement with Disney. These plans were seen as a direct attack by the company, who had wished to receive some funding from the council, and unsurprisingly after this received opposition instead of aid. With an angry local community and a suffering company budget, thanks to the ropey opening of Disneyland Paris in 1991, Disney were very restricted when they decided to begin constructing Disneyland Resort's second theme park. This budget was eventually scaled back even further, by choice of the recently appointed president of Disneyland Operations, Paul Pressler. Pressler's background was in merchandising, and he was therefore well versed in the cost-cutting practices of the retail industry, something the financially struggling Disney company wanted him to apply to the theme parks. He was specifically hired to focus on driving up revenue from the parks by whatever means necessary, putting profits before quality. At Disneyland, this saw the closure of the expensive-to-run submarine voyage, and the replacement of the electrical light parade with the much cheaper Light Magic parade. For California Adventure, this saw already scaled-back plans stripped down even further. Thus, what opened in 2001 was an end product far from the Disney magic that most guests were familiar with. Despite some good press reviews, guest satisfaction was shockingly low. Most believed there were too few attractions and too many restaurants and shops. Another widespread complaint was that the park didn't have enough for young children to enjoy. In its opening year, California Adventure saw only 5 million visitors compared to Disneyland's 15 million. It became quickly clear to Disney that change was needed to save this cheap park. Disney made some quick fixes to the park at first, hoping that this could quickly up attendance. The budget-cut electrical light parade was added to California Adventure in hopes of making guests stay longer, and a new show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Play It, opened up. Plus, the poorest reviewed attraction in the park, Superstar Limo, was closed, with plans to update it to Goofy's Superstar Limo. But thanks to the poor quality of the park and the worldwide tourism crash in 2001, this update never came. The following few years did see some positive additions, such as the Tower of Terror and Bugs Land. But it would take until 2005, when Bob Iger took over as CEO, for concrete and large-scale plans to be made to bring the park up to the Disney standard. Taking over 5 years to all come to fruition, 2012 was the year marked as California Adventure's reopening. Bob Iger performed a rededication of the park, truly showcasing that California Adventure was no longer the poor park it had opened at, a fact which was very clearly true. But more time has passed since then than what had passed between the initial opening and this first major update. Thus, the saved California Adventure is now almost something of the past, as many more updates have since come to the park, and not all of these have been quite so good. To display this, I believe that taking a close look at each section of the park and how it has changed from opening to 2012 to today will paint an excellent picture of just how the park has changed, for both the better and the worse.
For the most part, Disney's California Adventure lives up to its billing, the ultimate Golden State fantasy escape.
So let's begin with the entrance. When the park first opened, this was known as Sunshine Plaza and was themed to evoke a California postcard, with oversized letters and a squished Golden Gate Bridge. You really had to stand at the right angle to enjoy this idea, and even then it was a little tacky and far from immersive. The centerpiece was a large sun statue, meant to reflect the sun, but somehow placed facing the wrong direction, another error representative of the whole park itself. This statue was nothing special, and many of the shops that line the street were just as much of an eyesore. The Bakersfield Bakery and Burbank Ice Cream Shop were located within a California Zephyr train, some of the only good theming present here. With all this being said, it came as no surprise that for the park's updates, this entrance area was entirely changed. In 2012, Sunshine Plaza was essentially bulldozed to make way for Buena Vista Street, and thankfully this hasn't changed since. This area represents Los Angeles in the 1920s, when Walt Disney first arrived there. With store-lined streets, this area takes many theming cues from Disney's Main Street, resulting in an incredibly immersive welcome to the park. Where the sun statue once stood, you will now find the Carthay Circle restaurant, built to look like a replica of the Carthay Circle Theatre, where Walt Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs first premiered in 1937, a pricey place to grab a meal. This icon is the perfect way to draw guests into the park. In 2012, California Adventure even received its own version of the partner's statue, called the Storyteller's Statue. This statue, just like the area itself, is meant to celebrate the dreams and hard work of the young Walt Disney who first arrived in California. Finally, this update actually even brought an attraction to this land, the Red Car Trolley. Utilised both for guests and musical shows, this vehicle ride added a lot of kinetic energy and excitement. Far from the stale postcard it opened as, California Adventure's entrance is now a lively place that perfectly kicks off the adventure that awaits. Continuing on to the left, next within the 2001 park came the Hollywood Pictures backlot. This area was home to perhaps the biggest blunders of all, the infamous Superstar Limo attraction, a slow-moving dark ride full of Hollywood inside jokes that the average guest would not enjoy. It was so bad that it closed just 11 months after opening. The other star here was Muppet Vision 3D, an attraction copied from Florida's Hollywood Studios. In fact, similar to the many failed movie parks of the 90s and 2000s, this backlot-themed area, fit with its very own soundstage, saw no regular filming take place. The backlot idea was only present in lazy and cheap theming, not reality. There were two other attractions which could be found here. The Hyperion Theatre, which upon opening showed the very strange Steps in Time live show, and the Art of Animation. Art of Animation is actually one of the highest praised things from the park's opening, as it was the only place that Disney characters and theming could be found. Other than this, the area was home to shops and dining. The quick service restaurant took the theme of 4 iconic Hollywood eateries and served inspired offerings from 4 different counters. This idea was actually rather cool. The table service restaurant was not such a success. The ABC soap opera took its interior decor right out of iconic soap operas, something I'm sure that some people enjoyed, but it didn't really reflect the Disney brand to most. With all this being said, you may well expect this land to have been bulldozed and rebuilt from scratch like Sunshine Plaza, but that is actually pretty far from the case. This land was one of the first places to receive any updates, starting long before the big overhaul of the early 2010s. There was new entertainment brought in the form of Playhouse Disney Live and the Aladdin show within the Hyperion Theatre in 2003. Finally, in 2004, the backlot received a much-needed e-ticket attraction in the form of the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. A slightly scaled-back version of the one over at Hollywood Studios, this nonetheless provided an excellent bit of theming within this soundstage-littered area. 2006 would see another new attraction, Monsters Inc. Mike and Sully to the Rescue, built on top of what was Superstar Limo. This dark ride even utilised the same animatronics, so you could now spot some of your favourite or least favourite celebs suited up in biohazard suits. Thanks to this, the land was seen as one that had already received much attention, and therefore didn't need much more come 2012. A name change did occur, and this now titled Hollywood Land did slightly shift theming to lean more into the Golden Age of Hollywood theme, which was brought in by Tower of Terror. But this was only very surface level, and unfortunately, all the updates made over the years made the immersion of the Hollywood theme rather lacking. The animation building remained much the same, including the 2005 edition of Turtle Talk with Crush. Then Mickey's PhilharMagic replaced Muppets 3D, and Monsters Inc. stayed, as of course did Tower of Terror, making this land a hodgepodge of IPs in 2012. Today, Hollywood Land looks much the same as it did back in 2012. Much of the mess made by many of the early quick fixes remain, and little new has arrived. The show within the Hyperion Theatre has changed over the years, but this building is actually currently not being used to showcase anything at all. Another lot has occurred, with the area once home to Tower of Terror shifting into the current Avengers campus, a change I will explore more in a minute. Hollywood Land is home to a strange collection of IPs and attractions, all of which don't feel destined to last much longer. Arguably, this is the area of the park that currently needs the most work. Stepping back in time to 2001 once again, and continuing on our imaginary route around the park, next up would come Bountiful Valley Farm, located within the Golden State area of the park. Although, to access it this way in 2001, you would have had to sneak backstage. This area was simply an educational area with model farm sets. The only attraction here was the 4D show It's Tough to Be a Bug. By 2003, this Bugs Life IP was expanded to an entire area. Land which was once unused became Bugs Land, and the opening of this area saw the arrival of 4 new rides targeted towards young children. These were Flicks Flyers, Francis Ladybug Boogie, Tuck and Roll's Drive and Buggies, and Heimlich's Choo Choo Train. Bugs Land placed us within the perspective of an ant, with oversized plants and human items scattered throughout. The theming here really was great, and provided a bright and fun area for all the family to enjoy. This was the very first large expansion to the park, and whilst it did survive beyond 2012, its life would not last that much longer. It's Tough to Be a Bug closed on March the 19th, 2018, and the rest of A Bug's Land closed on September the 4th the same year, all to make way for Avengers Campus. Avengers Campus is inspired by the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and is anchored around a campus located on the former restricted grounds of a California Stark Industries and Strategic Scientific Reserve complex. This area grew out of the change that came to Tower of Terror in 2017. Still a part of Hollywoodland at first, this e-ticket attraction was transformed into Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. So when Avengers Campus opened in 2021, this attraction was inaugurated into that new land. Other than this, there is only currently one other attraction in the land, which is Web Slingers, a Spider-Man themed interactive dark ride. Avengers Campus is a pretty odd theme park land, as it utilises some of the most popular IPs ever created, but it doesn't transport us to anywhere we have seen upon the big screen. Instead of opting for one of the many fantasy worlds featured, Disney opted to create a pretty dull-looking campus-inspired land. Personally, I genuinely preferred Bugs Land to this area, as I'm not even a fan of Web Slingers, and although I do enjoy Mission Breakout, I'd happily lose it to take back Tower of Terror and Bugs Land. I know not everyone feels this way, and for many, the addition of Marvel to the park is a big win. But I just can't help wishing this fan-favourite IP had gotten the theme park land that it's truly worthy of. However, hopefully with the 2 new attractions announced at D23, this land will see the transformation it needs to be raised to the quality that Marvel deserves. I'm already excited as one of these is confirmed to be taking us into places from the actual movies, so that alone is a big win. Although for the 2012 update, Bugs Land remained, the Bountiful Valley Farm area was closed to make way for the biggest addition to the park, Cars Land. Cars Land is a tribute to Route 66 and is a recreation of the town of Radiator Springs from Disney Pixar's 2006 film Cars. The land spans 12 acres and contains 3 attractions. The largest attraction, Radiator Springs Racers, is a dark ride that utilises the same ride system as Test Track at Epcot. Then there are 2 flat rides, Mater's Junkyard Jamboree and Luigi's Rollicking Roadsters. Luigi's Rollicking Roadsters opened on March the 7th, 2016, and it replaced Luigi's Flying Tires, which was a failed hovercraft cum bumper car concept. Cars Land is one of my favourite theme park lands in the world, and I personally believe that it gets everything right. It transports you directly into the movies, but does not allow screen accuracy to get in the way of what is required to make the land itself enjoyable. The rides present may not perfectly mimic the Radiator Springs of the movie, but no one needs this kind of accuracy to enjoy a theme park land. What is needed is good attractions, something Radiator Springs Racers more than provides. Thankfully, aside from the change to Luigi's Flying Tires, this land is unchanged today, and remains one of the best in the world. The next major area within the 2001 park was the Pacific Wharf, a San Francisco-themed area home to many quick services, the Boudin Factory Tour, and Mission Tortilla Factory. Pacific Wharf was themed to resemble the old waterfront of Monterey, California, as a tribute to its fishing industry. This remained rather unchanged during the 2012 changes to the park, save for the replacement of the Mission Tortilla Factory with the Ghirardelli soda fountain and chocolate shop. But recently, change has come to this area. In 2023, the Pacific Wharf became San Francisco Square, inspired by the film Big Hero 6. This saw some sign changes and new theming come to the area, but the concept remained much the same. To be completely honest, there isn't enough here to truly make me passionately love or hate this change. I'm not inherently against the addition of IP, but this is the kind of example that does feel a little bit lazy. Continuing around the park, next up in 2001 was Paradise Pier. This area has seen perhaps the most changes of any place within the park. Upon opening, the pier was themed to a contemporary representation of Californian boardwalks. Attractions here were purposefully themed to be reminiscent of a cheap boardwalk, even down to the tacky gift shops and pay-to-play carnival games with generic prizes. The star of the pier was California Screamin', one of the only thrill rides within the park, and the centerpiece was the Sun Wheel, a very unique Ferris wheel. Other than this, there was a small roller coaster called Mulholland Madness and a collection of flat rides. The flat rides were all off-the-shelf theme park rides. With all these rides, this area really felt like it lacked innovation, and although its cheap look was part of the theme, it still felt cheap to guests who understandably didn't care that this was purposeful. Despite the cheap theme, this area was actually home to the park's most expensive restaurant, Avalon Cove by Wolfgang Puck. It was no surprise then that this shut within the first year and was rethemed to Ariel's Grotto, a princess character restaurant which Disney hoped would be another feature to please children. This was one of the first areas Bob Iger decided to update, and in 2008 it was already transformed. Paradise Pier was turned from a contemporary representation of Californian boardwalks into a representation of Victorian seaside amusement parks of the 1920s. And some of the area's off-the-shelf rides were either removed outright, such as the Maliboomer, or rethemed to have more of a focus on Disney characters. The Sun Wheel became Mickey's Fun Wheel, Mulholland Madness became Goofy's Sky School, and the Orange Stinger was transformed into the Silly Symphony Swings. Even the boardwalk games were updated to feature Disney characters and improved prizes. 2010 saw the addition of World of Color, a nighttime show that has 1,200 water fountains and includes light, fire, lasers, and fog, with high-definition projections on missed screens. This was an absolute hit, and although following iterations of the show have fluctuated in popularity, it still remains one of the biggest draws of the park. There was one other big addition that came in 2008. This was the opening of Toy Story Midway Mania. With this as the major attraction upon the pier, it comes as no surprise that this eventually inspired the direction the pier would take when it next came time to change. In 2018, Paradise Pier left for good to make way for Pixar Pier. Pixar Pier keeps intact much of the Victorian boardwalk style, with the addition of Pixar characters, and this area is now divided into 4 districts: Incredibles Park, Toy Story Boardwalk, Pixar Promenade, and Inside Out headquarters. Its attractions include the Pixar Pal-Around, Incredicoaster, Jesse's Critter Carousel, the Games of Pixar Pier, Toy Story Midway Mania, and the Inside Out Emotional Whirlwind. All of these attractions are the same as before, just with new theming, save for the Inside Out Emotional Whirlwind, which is a rethemed flat ride from Bugs Land. The stores and boardwalk games all now feature a Pixar theme, and Ariel's Grotto has become the Lamplight Lounge. Some of what was once part of Paradise Pier didn't quite make the cut for the Pixar retheme, and all of this became a part of a new area called Paradise Gardens Park. Paradise Gardens' 5 attractions include Goofy's Sky School, Silly Symphony Swings, Jumpin' Jellyfish, Golden Zephyr, and The Little Mermaid Ariel's Undersea Adventure, which replaced the opening day attraction Golden Dreams, a film presented by Whoopi Goldberg all about California's evolution. The attractions here are all fine, but the choice to maintain the Paradise theme while also bringing Pixar onto the pier feels like a strange one. It is almost like Disney have only half committed to this IP and didn't know what to do with the areas not so easy to change. For example, the Little Mermaid Dark Ride. Thanks to this, the addition of Pixar Pier just feels like another IP lazily added into the mess of the park today. The final area of the park takes us back round towards the entrance. And in 2001, this patch of the park was split into 2 distinct areas. First, there was the Grizzly Peak Recreation Area. Grizzly Peak is themed around California's wilderness and national parks, with particular references to Yosemite and Redwood National Parks. The major ride here was Grizzly River Run, a good rapids ride, but lacking in your typical Disney animatronic theming, which was actually originally planned but budget cut. There was also the Redwood Creek Challenge Trail, one of the few areas of the park fit for young children to enjoy. This trail has since seen 2 different IPs come, Brother Bear in 2003 and Pixar's Up in 2009. Both Grizzly River Run and the Redwood Creek Challenge Trail with its Up theme are still there today. The second section in 2001 was Condor Flats, an area to celebrate aviation history, which housed one of the park's major attractions, soaring over California. These areas did not really change in 2012, but have since seen some updates. Sadly, no new theming has come to Grizzly River Run, and the Condor Flats section was incorporated into the Grizzly Peak area and is now known as Grizzly Peak Airfield. Following this, in 2016, Soaring over California was replaced by Soaring Around the World. Sadly, the world version of Soaring is not as loved, nor is it as good a fit for the park as the California version. In fact, the loss of California from the ride feels rather representative of a larger point I wish to make about the park today. With all the IP that has arrived to the park, the California theme seems to be barely clinging on. The effort to link these IPs to the location is there, but Pixar Pier and Avengers Campus really don't feel like they need the tie. Plus, even Cars Land, a film actually set in Arizona, not California like some think, reminds us more of the film than any real place. Just like the arrival of IP to Disney's studio parks has shifted their theme from the original studio backlot-inspired one, I believe the same can be said about much of California Adventure. The Hollywood backlot is dominated by Monsters Inc., and Grizzly Peak now invites us to travel around the world. The California theming may remain in the exteriors of these lands, and of course upon Buena Vista Street. But is this truly the dominating feature of the park these days? Personally, I don't think so. Instead, I feel like the park is, as I've already said, a mess of IPs that don't really fit together. While the park might be home to some good attractions today, something it wasn't back in 2001, it does have a whole host of new issues. Perhaps not worse than it has ever been, I do feel that the park isn't currently at its best, and was actually better back in 2012, when a more cohesive vision was present. The future additions announced at this year's D23 of a Coco and an Avatar boat ride are just adding even more IP into the mess. We don't yet know the location of either of these attractions, so it's hard to speculate what they will do to the park as a whole. And as far as the attractions themselves go, they sound like they will be great. But, as already mentioned, whether or not they will be cohesive with the rest of the park is another question. Perhaps the addition of Coco will finally see Paradise Gardens Park inaugurated into Pixar Pier, but right now this is all just speculation. Personally, just like the Walt Disney Studios Park in Paris, which is changing its name to Disney's Adventure World, I think a name change may well be on the way for Disney's California Adventure Park. So, what do you think? Do you think Disney's California Adventure is once again on a downwards trajectory? Let me know in the comments. What changes do you think are most needed? Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, check out some of my other videos and the links in the description.